Hey, what's up, YouTube family? It's your favorite melanated guy from Nebraska. Yeah, it's 9:02 this evening. You know, I was just sitting here, I was thinking, I'm like, you know what? Since I'm paying for this app that allows me to drop all this content every week, I might as well drop as much content as I can. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna drop as much content as I can. If I got some time to edit and do the content, I'm gonna do it. Just like now, I got time, so I'm just going to drop some content on you guys. So we're back to this book, the Indigenous Nations of New Netherlands, New England, New Spain, New France, and the Antilles Island. We're in a different chapter in this book, and you know what, guys? I've went to other chapters in this book, and I'm gonna jump around because there's some real bombshell information. I'm talking about real bombshell information in this book that I haven't even touched on. So you know what? Y'all won't have to forgive me. I'm going to jump around in this book because, they have a whole chapter about the author of Pan-Africanism. And guess what? As you could guess it, is not a melanated person. So that is going to be one of them sit down ones. I'm going to present that to you guys when I'm at home. I got my laptop, all that good stuff, so I can take my time and be thorough. In this chapter, we're in a different chapter. And this is about education. How the Reconstruction era and how they brought the different type of education that they needed to brainwash individuals in the Reconstruction era, after the Reconstruction era, hence to how we got the education system we have now. So we're going to go ahead and get into that. Chapter 8, Miseducation of the American Indians. And in this chapter, we have American compulsory education, 1850s time period. What is compulsory education? Schooling that is required by law, the age up to which children are legally compelled to attend school. The child's 15th birthday. The ending age of compulsory schooling is thus different from the ending age of an educational program. Compulsory school attendance or compulsory schooling means that parents are obligated or obliged to send their children to a certain school, or they can be fined, or Child Protective Services can come take them by court order. All countries except Bhutan, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, and Vatican City have compulsory education. In the United States, students normally attend 12 grades of study over 12 calendar years of primary, elementary, and secondary education before graduating and earning a diploma that makes them eligible for admission to higher education. School is mandatory until age 18 in some U.S. states. In Canada, attendance in school is compulsory up to the age of 16. In all provinces except Manitoba, New Brunswick, and Ontario, where attendance is compulsory until the student turns 18, or as soon as a secondary school diploma has been achieved. The American schooling system at first was created solely for teaching a pre-tailored curriculum enforced by all newly made European citizens and so-called free Negroes of the newly formed United States. In 1852, Massachusetts was the first United States to pass a compulsory universal public education law. In particular, the Massachusetts General Court required every town to create and operate a grammar school. Fines were imposed on parents who did not send their children to school, and the government took the power to take children away from their parents and apprenticed them to others if government officials decided that the parents were unfit to have the children educated properly. In 1918, Mississippi became the last state to enact a compulsory attendance law. In 1922, an attempt was made by voters of Oregon to enact the Oregon Compulsory Education Act, which would require all children between the age of 8 and 16 to attend public schools, only leaving exceptions for mentally or physically unfit children. Exceeding a certain living distance from a state school or having written consent from a county superintendent to receive private instruction. The law was passed by popular vote, but was later ruled unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court in Pierce versus Society of Sisters, determining that a child is not a mere creature of the state. This case settled this dispute about whether or not private schools had the right to do business and educate within the United States. Much of what you have been taught in the United States has been fabricated to fit the United States government's view of events. That is true. It became his story, forgetting all the thousands of pieces of artwork and literatures prior to the founding of the United States, all describing opposite of what so-called United States history teaches. Majority of history in America has been purposely taught backwards. The image I've added on the next page sums it up perfectly. And on this page, we have a picture, personifications of Philippines, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Cuba, titled School Begins. Puck Magazine, January 25th, 1899, by J. Ottoman Lith, Co., Puck Building, New York. So, as you can see, you have Uncle Sam, and then you have the children up front, and you can see that they're constrained while the more European individuals are in the back. And, this picture says a lot. And I believe on the next page, we'll get a better understanding of what this picture means. During colonization, most people of color were considered Negro and were subject to slavery. After colonization, people were only able to govern themselves under United States standards. One of those standards were practicing a form of American nationalism. Wow. You ever wonder why these countries are so proud of their given flags or call someone from Puerto Rico black? And those are fighting words. Many of the populations have also been taught they come from Africa, when in fact, they are the Negro de Toras. So American nationalism being taught early. So you got to get them early. You know what I mean? When you initially colonize, you have to instill that pride of, American nationalism inside of these individuals that you colonize. And that, becomes to grow and grow and grow. And then now you got these adults who are so, they latch on to this flag and this idea of America and what they believe it represents. So, man, all that makes a whole lot of sense. On this page, we have some more descriptions, and we have some pictures and descriptions under the pictures. Poster, the Confederate United States refused their comment to be governed, but the Union was preserved without their consent. Blackboard, the consent of the government is a good thing in theory, but very rare in fact. England has governed her colonies whether they consented or not. By not waiting for their consent, she has greatly advanced the world civilization. The U.S. must govern its new territories with or without their consent until they govern themselves. So the brainwashing has to commence. When the brainwashing is done is when you no longer have to brainwash and they'll brainwash themselves. So that's what that means. That's what I took out of that. And then the picture under here says they are only being taught the history of the West, post-exploration 1800s, aka Reformation. The Eastern Woodlands history of the Algonquin, Iroquoian, and the West Indian nations are not being taught. Only selected parts that will become U.S. history will only be taught from now on. So, this is basic stuff at this point. History is not, history is history. History is taught by the winner. So, if I'm the winner and I'm teaching those who I've, conquered, of course, I'm not going to teach y'all the truth, right? So-called black people in this country have been conquered. So, of course, we're not going to get the truth. We're going to get taught whatever it is we need to know for us to think a certain way of ourselves. So we're not going to get the truth. You have to dig for it. That's why independent research is so important. That's why this book is so important. And that's why everybody needs to do their part and look for themselves, their own history. Okay, search for yourself so you can be, enlightened and informed, because that's when power comes and you won't be able to be easily fooled by these American fool system. So let's go ahead and go to the next page. So here we have some more descriptions under these pictures. The Woodland nations have been taught history backwards and upside down, going from C to A. while the Chinese children observes from the woodland Indian an attempt to copy and cheat from his book. He wouldn't know if it's upside down because he doesn't know how to speak or read English yet. So if the American Negro is the woodland Indian, who is the image we have been sold as the slave? This is the awkward Indian. This is the Arawakan Indian we touched on in Stedman's narrative, referred to as Surimikas. The Suriname nations, we have been taught they were one race, but the American nations were a multiple of races and ethnicities, with various skin complexions, hair types from soft to coarse, all up the eastern coast, all through Mexico, the West Indies, as well as Central and South America. Many Spanish and Portuguese were selling them as slaves to neighboring colonies. Many families fleeing the wars or slavery from the Spanish for refuge in the United States, not knowing the English were also going to enslave them. Wow. These nations would later join forces in Florida during the Seminole and Yamasee Wars against the United States Army, with other various enslaved nations, which would later be dubbed Negro slave revolts. See an example of one of these so-called revolts on the next page. Yo, I'm dropping some bombs here, man. These are some quiet bombs. These are some thunder and lightning here, man. Y'all need to really, read over this. Read over it again so you can truly understand. And it can sink into your mind what's really going on here. So let's go ahead and go to the next page. But man, y'all, this is some good information here, and I'm digging it. I'm loving it. On your left are the Arawakan nations who were enslaved from Guyana into the southern plantation. On the right are a supposed depiction of the Seminoles who are depicted as black, white feathered crowns. Article reads, the above is intending to represent the horror massacre of the whites in Florida in December 1835. In January, February, March, and April of 1836, when near 400, including women and children, fell victims to the barbarity of the Negroes and Indians. End of description. Now let's look at the article published 4 years earlier in 1831 Virginia paper used to reference a separate so-called rebellion. Article at the bottom reads, the scenes which above plate is designed to represent our figure 1, a mother is shooting for the lives of her children. 2, Mr. Travis cruelly murdered by his own slaves. 3, Mr. Rero, who bravely defended himself and his wife escaped. 4, a comp of mounted dragoons in pursuit of the blacks. These ads were used as propaganda to create fear in the millions of newly arrived European immigrants at that time, in attempts to make them both fear and hate anyone with dark skin referenced as black, wow, Indian, or colored, to side with the newly formed government, who would ultimately set them all free from indentured servitude contracts. We will touch on this later in our 5 points segment. Many so-called American historians will claim this exact article was describing the so-called Nat Turner Rebellion. But as you can see, between 1831 and 1835, this same image must have been altered and used multiple occasions throughout newspapers in each newly formed state. That goes to show you how powerful, newspapers are. It goes to show you how it could, impact the minds of individuals, and how propaganda is used through newspapers. So, newspapers have a lot of power. They have a lot of influence in the minds of those who adhere to them. You know what I mean? So you got newly coming immigrants coming over here, and they're looking at these newspapers, and it's filling them their hearts up and their minds up with this notion that all of these individuals that have been over here suffering under this rule is telling them that, hey, these are your enemies. These are the people that you should fear, because it could be you next. 100% pure propaganda through newspapers. And it just goes to show you, man, the many tools of the enemy, of the government, that they used to suppress and oppress. So let's go ahead and go to the next page. This is the last page, and I think it's going to wrap up everything that we've been talking about. My bad, y'all. I lied. that was the last page of that presentation in the book. But before I go, I wanted to give this little tidbit piece of information to you guys. Here on your screen, you'll find a picture of the state of Florida, right, where blacks lived. Long before the Civil War, blacks found freedom in the Spanish Florida. This is where they clustered between 1690 and the 1850s. Several settlements lasting only a few years. Because you know about those towns, just like towns like Seneca Village in the land of the blacks in Manhattan. We had plenty of towns, we had plenty of villages, we had plenty of places where we were prosperous and we lived, and we had things, you know what I mean? We didn't have to go integrate into other places and be under other people's rulership to be able to live and cultivate our lives and be able to have the things that we needed to survive and to not only survive, but also progress, you know what I mean, and be content. Now we know and understand that eventually these towns will be attacked, these towns will be taken from us, flooded, bombed, and a lot of European immigrants who would later come into this country would assist the government in doing said things. So it's the more you know, y'all. It's the more you know. And also you must understand, there were plenty of black tribal individuals or different groups of black people that came to this country as well. You have black Europeans that came to this country, right, as indentured servants, and they would later be colonized as well, along with the Indians and the indigenous individuals. That's why you see a separation between black, Negro, and Indian, right? Because there were multiple groups of black people. There were not just one group of black people. When people think about black people, they think about black people in just one group. They forget that there are multiple groups of black people. There are different tribes within our nation, so they forget that. And they get confused when you see Indian, black, or Negro. But eventually we'll all get clustered up and put together, and you'll all be considered Negroes, blacks, and Indian. That will be taken away. We all got reclassified as the same thing. So, picture proof to go along with what we just read. I hope you guys enjoyed this content, man. Like I said, I'm gonna continue to drop content every time I'm bored and not doing nothing. I'm paying for this editor app, so I might as well just go ahead and drop the content, right? I might as well get what I pay for it, because eventually I'm gonna stop paying for it, because I like saving money, So I hope you guys enjoyed this content. Please like, share, and subscribe, man. Please check out my page every day for any updates, any new videos, new content, any new information. Just check it out, because I don't know if YouTube is letting people know or letting my followers know about the content that I'm dropping. All right. So it's your favorite black guy from Nebraska, your favorite melanated gentleman from Nebraska. Yes, there are melanated people in Nebraska. Have a good night. I'm out. Peace.